With the recent release of massive supports like Ineffa, Lauma, Durin, and even Columbina, Genshin team building has changed a lot. This has resulted in an insane number of new teams, especially for older characters. So in this video, we'll be discussing the best teams for every Fontaine DPS, specifically for older players who want to bring their favorite DPS back into the current meta. Let's start with what is currently the strongest Fontaine DPS, Arlecchino. Especially after the release of Ineffa, Durin, and Columbina, she gained a lot of new team options. Her traditional best hypercarry melt team with Sitlali is still decent, but it clearly falls short when compared to newer DPS units. However, this is not her best team anymore. Her current strongest team is with Durin, Ineffa, and Yelan. Honestly, this is a full wheelchair team, but it is what it is. With premium setups, this team reaches around 115k DPS, which is very strong. You also have variations, such as replacing Ineffa with Fischl for Hexery buffs, or replacing Durin with Bennett for a more F2P friendly version. This setup is also expected to receive a massive buff after Columbina release. Early calculations show that replacing Yelan with Columbina pushes this team close to 130k DPS, which is on par with top-tier Flynn's teams. Her pure overload team with Durin, Fischl, and Chevreuse is also very strong, easily hitting 105 to 110k DPS. So if you're an Arlecchino main, make sure you own at least a few of these core units. Outside of premium teams, Arlecchino is still well known for her F2P friendly options, such as vape teams with Xingqiu, Mona, and Sucrose, which also received indirect buffs thanks to Hexery effects. Arlecchino is one of the DPS characters with the highest number of viable teams. However, if you're planning to invest in her going into version 6.2 and beyond, I strongly recommend focusing on her premium teams, because her personal damage will only fall further behind newer DPS units over time. Before moving on, quick reminder, you can win a free Welkin for the 9K subscriber special. All details are in the description. And don't forget to check out Loot Bar. They're currently offering insane discounts on the active banners, making it the cheapest top-up option right now. Just use my link below to grab all the offers. Now, coming to the second DPS, Navia. Navia is in a very interesting position after the release of Lunar Crystallise. Her best-in-slot team is currently looking like Navia, Columbina, Ilyuga, and Ineffa, which, once again, is another wheelchair team. Before going further, let me make this clear. Columbina and Ineffa together are currently the strongest support duo in the game. They deal insanely high personal damage and also unlock Ascendant Gleam for the entire team, massively boosting total DPS. This is why most older DPS characters now have their best teams built around these two. Coming back to Navia, outside of Columbina, the only other option to trigger Lunar Crystallise is Zebai. This allows Navia to be played as a dual DPS quick swap unit alongside Zebai, which surprisingly works very well due to Navia's playstyle revolving around skill usage and Crystallise stack generation. Outside of Lunar Crystallise teams, her older setups with Xilonen and Farina or Xilonen and Mavuka are still playable. However, I would not recommend heavily investing into those teams anymore, as they are very likely to become obsolete with the increasing difficulty of endgame content. Now, moving on to Wriothesley. He got nothing. Yes, literally nothing. Durin is only a slight upgrade over Mavuka for him, and that's about it. At this point, he is looking like the weakest Fontaine DPS. His best teams are still Durin Melt or Mavuka Melt, followed by Freeze teams with Escoffier. You can also run him with Skirk as a burst DPS pairing, and that's pretty much it. So let's move on. Next up is Clorinde. She actually gained a lot of new team options recently, thanks to Ineffa enabling Lunar Charge and Durin enabling strong overload teams. Her current best-in-slot team is with Ineffa, Columbina, and Sucrose, reaching around 110k DPS. Right now, Clorinde is basically a weaker version of Flynn's in Lunar Charge teams since most of their team cores overlap. However, Clorinde also works extremely well in overload teams with Chevreuse, Durin, and Fischl, once again hitting around 110k DPS in premium setups. If you're planning to use Clorinde for endgame content, you must build around either Ineffa for Lunar Charge or Durin for Overload. I would not recommend pulling or investing into Clorinde if you don't have access to at least one of these two supports, because she absolutely needs that level of support to compete with modern DPS units. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward. As I said, many of you are still playing Clorinde in Hyperbloom teams, which I honestly do not recommend. If you want to maximize Hyperbloom damage, you need to completely change the entire build into a full Elemental Mastery setup. At that point, the question becomes why even use Clorinde in that role when characters like Kuki Shinobu can do the same reaction damage more efficiently. If you really want to maximize Clorinde's damage as a main DPS, her best setup is still Electrocharged. Her classic team with Furina and Yelan is very strong, and this can now be upgraded to Ineffa and Columbina for even higher damage. Now coming to Lyney. His situation is pretty similar to Arlecchino. He did gain a new team with Durin, which gives him around a 10 to 15,000 DPS increase. Apart from that, he can also be played in the Ineffa Columbina core, which actually suits his playstyle quite well, especially since Ineffa provides a solid shield. Lyney is definitely usable now with premium setups, but his older teams are still honestly pretty bad. So if you want to play Lyney today, you really need to invest into the newer support cores. Finally, let's talk about Neuvillette. He is by far the most owned character among all of these units, and arguably still one of the strongest DPS in the game, along with Arlecchino. His hypercarry teams with Kazuha and Zalonin, as well as his freeze teams with Escoffier and Citlali, sit around 95 to 100,000 DPS. That's noticeably lower compared to newer DPS units, especially considering that these are fully 5-star teams. Right now, his strongest teams are Hyperbloom with Lauma and Burgeon with Durin, both sitting around 110,000 DPS. As expected, these are also wheelchair teams. Units like Lauma are extremely strong and synergize very well with Neuvillette thanks to the 25% Hydro Resistance Shred. You can even replace Furina with another unit like Nahida, and the damage will remain very similar. That's because Neuvillette's personal damage in these setups is relatively low. He functions more as a Hydro applicator with massive AoE, self-healing, and extremely consistent Hydro uptime. Other setups like dual DPS teams with Skirk are also very strong, but realistically, most players will not run those teams. So overall, Neuvillette ends up in a very similar position to Arlecchino in terms of power level. And honestly, at this point, I would not recommend pulling Neuvillette anymore, especially with his banner being so close. Most of these DPS characters have been power crept, but they are still usable if you invest heavily into them. If you're a veteran player who is already clearing endgame content, you can absolutely bring them back and have fun. Just don't expect anything exceptional compared to newer DPS units. I hope this gives you a clear picture of the current DPS rankings and updated team options for Fontaine characters. Let me know in the comments if you want to see similar breakdowns for DPS units from other regions. And if you're still confused about who to pull on upcoming banners, make sure to check out the videos on screen. Till then.